Good Friday morning to you. I have one question that is asked to me in my house more than any other question. What's for dinner? Do you ever have that? Do you ever get asked that question over and over again? What's for dinner? It seems to be the one thing that is on all of our minds. And I have to say, I kind of appreciate it. Because at this point, I feel like being asked what's for dinner is really a faithful question. Think about it. In the book of Genesis, the first command that God gives to his new creation, that of Adam and Eve, is that they may eat freely of anything, except one thing, of course. But eat freely is the first command. It seems like God has been focused on what's for dinner as well. Jesus said to his disciples, I am the bread of life. There's a reminder that God kind of orients all of our faith on what is nourishing to us. In fact, our faith life should focus on what is providing us the sustenance that we need to not only live a life of faith, but to serve God in all that we do. I mentioned earlier in the week that I had been drawn back to the story of the Exodus. And so I've been reading at the end of Genesis and through the book of Exodus. I've been recalling this point in the people's lives where God's promise was fulfilled. Now, if you aren't familiar with the story, God's people had been enslaved in Egypt for a very long time. And God had raised up a leader, Moses, to carry them through to the promise fulfilled, a promise made to Abraham and throughout the generations. They would be God's people and there would be a land promised to them. As Moses grew with age and wisdom and faith, God called him to be God's voice for Pharaoh. There were several plagues, and then finally the day came when the Israelites would finally leave Egypt and start making their way to the promised land. Now, if you read in Exodus 12, you'll realize that the Israelites had been enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. It's not like it was a momentary time there. It was generations, it was centuries, it was amazing. But God was still their God, and the promise was still meant to be fulfilled. And so on the eve before everything was going to come to fulfillment, the Israelites had a specific direction. It wasn't just about what they were supposed to take, how they were supposed to prepare for the journey. They also were given a specific direction for what they were to eat. In Exodus 13, verses 3 through 10, it not only talks about in that moment what the Israelites were supposed to do for food, but how that moment would be commemorated for every generation to follow. Let me read it to you. Exodus 13, beginning with verse 3. Then Moses said to the people, commemorate this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today in the month of Aviv, you are leaving, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. You are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the seventh day hold a festival to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during these 7 days, nothing with yeast in it to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that the law of the Lord is to be on your lips. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand. You must keep this ordinance at the appropriate time, year after year. Now, some of you might think, what does that matter for us today? But this verse, this passage echoes that of Deuteronomy. In fact, it echoes the story of the continuation that Jesus has in his ministry. At the Lord's Supper, at the last time he gathered with his disciples, he took the bread, he blessed it, he gave thanks, he broke it and gave it to him and said, take and eat. This is my body. Do this in remembrance of me. He does the same with the cup. Now, all of this may feel like it's just ritual and it's just part of worship. But so much of this transitional time that we've been in has reminded us that we bring what we do at church back into our homes. In fact, our homes should be our first sanctuary. It should be the sanctuary that we gather in every day to give thanks to the Lord. So tonight, when you're having dinner together, whether you're by yourself, whether you're on the phone talking with loved ones far away, maybe you're gathered at a table with children of all ages and sizes. Think about this. When you gather the food before you, you are giving thanks for all that God has done in your life. And you are also nourishing your bodies and preparing yourself for all that is to come. God ordered the Israelites to eat bread for 6 days. In so many ways, this is an act of Sabbath. They are to nourish their bodies to prepare for the day of the Lord, a day when they give thanks and then get ready for all that is to come. The same is true for us. Every day we need to take care of our bodies and nourish them so that we can prepare for how we celebrate what God is doing in our lives and how we can be ready for when God calls us to continue to go. I think there's no more important time than this, when disease, when turmoil, when divide is ever before us. We need to be nourished. We need to be fed. And God has made sure to remind us that eating, that breaking bread, that giving thanks is the utmost important in our life of faith. So what's for dinner in your house? I'm not sure what it is in mine tonight, but regardless of what we serve at our table, it will be good and it will be blessed and it will make us ready for all that is to come. Happy Friday. It's going to be a great week.